curious minds gather for deep, intentional conversations that spark new understanding. I'm your host, Deepa, founder of the Deep and Meaningful Consultancy. We believe the biggest challenges of our time demand more than quick takes. They call for nuanced dialogue, deliberate questioning, and a willingness to explore the uncomfortable. Adda is the Hindi word for that space where diverse perspectives collide and transform understanding, hopefully leading to more conscious action. In today's episode, I'm speaking with Laura Payette. Laura and I met at an event that she hosted on personal reflection and storytelling in Tirana, Albania, where I was blown away by her encouragement of deep reflection and sharing. Laura's passion has always been learning, from coordinating international education programs at non-profits to managing leadership development programs at Microsoft. The common denominator in her career has been helping others grow and transform so they can pursue what's meaningful to them. She spent the last few years traveling and living outside of her home country with her family so that they can expand their perspective and learn. The journey has opened up exploration, not just of interesting destinations, but also of shifting identity, the critical role of being in community, and how to be instead of do, especially when navigating transition. She's now building her coaching practice to support others who are also moving through transitions in their own lives. We got to test out my new kit and do my first ever in-person conversation at my flat in Tirana over coffee and cake, the very best conditions for an Adda. We got into the joys and challenges of travelling across borders and cultures, what we learn about others, and most importantly, what we learn about ourselves. You can check out the links in the show notes to Laura's Substack and coaching practice. I hope you enjoy the conversation. Hey Laura, welcome to the Adda. It's really lovely to have just met you and also do this in person because this is my first in-person conversation, which is really, really lovely. And what I'm really keen to kick off with is that it's an unusual... I'm sitting in Tirana. We're in Albania. And when I've had conversations with people about where are you going, where are you starting, what journey are you on? And I've said, I'm going to Albania. The general feeling and the general thing is, interesting choice. And so I'm kind of curious for you in your journey that the texture of daily life, but also I'm kind of curious of what you think Albania reveals about Europe that the rest of Europe doesn't, because you've traveled extensively across Europe as well.
Extensively is relative, but some. And, just for context, right, I'm American, we're an American family. So my perspective is also, from that lens, for better or for worse. And so, yeah, gosh, where to dive? I'm chuckling a little bit and made a face when you said, people, the kooky, right? I'm like, oh yeah. To be really honest, I did not know where Albania was when we started our nomadic travels, right? I grew up, we didn't learn anything about Eastern Europe. Geographically, I knew where it was, right? But that's the extent of what my knowledge was. And in university, my passion and interest was Latin America. So I, knew lots about Latin America, and I also speak Spanish, but, Europe and Eastern Europe was definitely, something so far off my radar. And when we started our travels, I had actually only ever taken one trip to Europe. We went to Portugal a number of years ago. And so I was like, the kid in the candy shop. It was like, I want to go see all the famous places. I haven't even been to the quote unquote normal places in Europe that, Western Europe that people talk about. I want to start there.
And what was that? Was that the cheesy kind of, I want to go see the Eiffel Tower?
It wasn't so
Not
much
cheesy, but you know what I mean?
It wasn't so much landmarks, but in terms of just destinations. Oh, I've never been to London. I've never been to Paris. I've never been, right? Just the sort of the places that when people talk about, oh, I've been to Europe, I hadn't been to any of those places. And so Albania was like not even on a list. It was on my husband's list. It was not on my list in terms of priority, right? We got there in a roundabout way because we were not only traveling to learn and explore the world and show our kids the world in a way that I'd never gotten to do, but also to see if, like, gosh, is there some place we could stay out and live for a little while, like not just travel, but like live and immerse ourselves. There's a whole story behind that, but why I wanted to do that. And you can't just pick up and live anywhere you want around the world. It's not a thing. For us, Albania was a place where there was a path to do that. And so that's how it came onto our radar. And so, once we visited, we had seen a chunk of the world, not only parts of Western Europe, but parts of Southeast Asia. We had been to Argentina. We had seen a whole variety of different cultures, different histories, different architectures, climates, languages, you name it.
Yeah.
And so we had that context to sort of fit Albania into. And it is a totally different place for 1,000 different reasons.
Say more about that.
Oh, I mean, look at its history.
Yeah.
And I don't profess to be an expert on its history. Far from it. I have lots to learn. But it was completely isolated from the rest of the world for decades. I have a friend, she's living in the US, but she's originally from the UK. And she said, I remember going, to Greece in high school or whatever it's called, on a trip. And, we're in Corfu and we can see across, and it's like, oh, there's this place called Albania. And she's like, nobody knew anything about it because it was just like,
it was closed.
It exists, but no, I don't know what happens there. And now it's a place that is, open, and people like us and you and so many others are here, not just as tourists, but also as people who are interested in staying here longer and learning more about it. And like, where does that fit into our world schema? And like, what are the things that we not only can learn about Albania, but also about ourselves and about human nature. And so it's a fascinating place to be.
And I'm kind of curious about that because you can go anywhere in the world, right? And the privilege of passports that allow you to do that. And you've been traveling through, and I'm kind of, one thing that really struck me in our conversation the other day was this idea of the ease of that.
For some people, including ourselves.
For ourselves, right? So the ease of that travel. But that ease comes with some assumptions, and it comes with, some people travel with the assumption that everyone's going to speak English, or they're going to be able to get their favorite soda or drinks or whatever wherever they go. And I'm curious as to, you leave the US with then quite, fairly young kids and embark on this kind of exploration of curiosity and wonder. And I'm kind of curious about that, because I think talking about Albania and starting with where we are and where we're sitting and why we're here, but also the journey of exploration that's got there, and that exploration of different cultures and different ways of seeing. Because I think the way of seeing is interesting here. And I haven't even been here 2 weeks yet. And so I'm kind of curious in your experiences of that and the nuances and the challenges of some of that, because the world's your oyster in lots of ways, but that comes with both privilege and challenge and responsibility and all of that mixed into it as well as part of that experience, which feels like it could be a lot.
There's so many layers there. I'm not even sure where to dive in. I mean, perhaps one of the ways in is simply, just the privilege to be able to get on an airplane. Yes, with the passport that, is not questioned currently and, opens doors for you, right?
Yeah.
We don't have to submit applications and bank statements and proof that we're going to return to our home country and itineraries and, all these things just to go visit a country. We can literally from night to morning, book a flight, book a hotel or an Airbnb, get on the flight and go and just show up somewhere. Not everywhere around the world, but many, many places. So it's very easy from that perspective. And as we've traveled and met people from countries who don't have that access, I've learned quite a lot, right? That I had taken for granted, the ease of our ability to just go. And so that is something that I look at differently now. And I have massive appreciation for the ability to do that. Never mind the financial means, which is a whole other layer, right?
Yeah.
And we worked to make it possible to do this. And we, have made a lot of trade-offs also to do what we're doing. But so, there's that just the access piece. And then you think about, I think about accessibility. We are a physically able family, boarding airplanes up and down stairs, going through airports, getting on and off public transit, doing a ton of walking. I mean, you walk a lot when you travel around the world. And you've got to be physically, not just physically able, but healthy to do all of that, right? That is a certain level of privilege. So I am very aware of these things in a way that I wasn't as aware just living day-to-day life, back home. And I think it's just increased my gratitude because it's something, part of the reason we're doing this now at this point in our lives is because we have our health. Yeah. It's one of those things that we sort of said, well, we could wait until we're older and, sort of do it at a more traditional time. But my in-laws had passed away and it happened during the pandemic, not because of it, but it was this moment of clarity of like, what do you really want out of life? And life's not guaranteed. So what do we really want to go after? And so here we are doing it in part because we are able. And so just massive gratitude for that because it's not a given. And so there's so much I look at through that lens of appreciation.
I think that's massive. And I think for me, I had this real sense that the age that I'm at, the seniority that I'm at, and the opportunities that I have had, there's also I felt like I've got a responsibility to go and live it.
Well, and for us, that was really compounded because of kids.
Yeah.
Right? So the US is, it's a huge country, but it is somewhat isolated, from many other parts of it. It's just far away, right? Getting to other parts of the world takes real time, energy, and effort. And so, and it's expensive. And so it's not, I was going to say it's not possible. It is possible, but right, you have to make maybe more sacrifices, more trade-offs sometimes and Americans classically don't get much vacation time off of work, right? Yeah. So there are a lot of factors that go into how easy it is for people to travel around the world. But I had a few experiences growing up and as I became a young adult, that really showed me there's so much more out there to learn and understand. And that massively expands your perspective on the world. And there's so much value in that. And so we knew we wanted our kids to have that at a younger age and in a more profound way. And so for that, what you said about responsibility, that for me is where it hooks in, is with the kids. Yeah. And the fact that we had this ability to do it and to really significantly broaden their perspective and give them this, in a sense, a gift, and then they can choose what they want to do with that as they grow up and how they want to lean into it or lean away from it, right? They'll be able to have agency in that.
And how's that influenced what you've exposed them to in the countries that you've gone to? Because, you know, like, for example, given where we are, like I went to the House of Leaves, and which is a museum that talks about the surveillance. And it is fascinating to me, the extent of infiltration that went on in terms of people's homes. But also, then I did an architecture tour, and you learn about 5-story buildings versus 9-story buildings, and how your loyalty that you demonstrate towards the party determined where you lived, but also the floor in which you lived inside a building, and the extent of surveillance that went on. I mean, but if you're looking at abject poverty and slums, and I mean, there's a lot going on around the world, not just from a geopolitical point of view, but also human existence. And because you could travel with privilege, which means that you stay in nice, you know, it's all very nice, and it's pretty, and it's easy. But then to what you're saying about giving them an experience and a broader perspective, it's about getting into the cracks of, and the realities of existence as well. And so have you navigated that around the world? And have some places been easier than others, or more surprising than others, maybe?
I mean, there are so many layers to, yes, how you can choose to travel in the world. And I'll just sort of one of the things that I make sure that we do in most of the places we visit, it has varied depending on a lot of factors, but I want to make sure that we are taking in history that is, you know, from the perspective of where we are visiting. And at times that history is really dark. And so for, you know, kids who are adolescents, it can be really overwhelming for them.
Especially coming out of COVID as well.
And so like when we were in Argentina, you know, and I studied Latin American history, so I knew these things, right? I knew about los desaparecidos that disappeared, you know, during the 70s, during the dictatorship there. The girls didn't have any of that knowledge or context because, of course, they haven't gotten to that part of, you know, school. But here we were, and I wasn't going to pass that by. And so we went on this tour, and it was heavy. And there was actually a part of it that they were not allowed to go on from the tour guide. Like it was too much. But we were able to tell them later about, you know, parts of it. So we make sure that we go and we learn those pieces of it, and that we have conversations, and that they're aware that these things have not just happened historically, but there are things happening in the world today where there are real parallels. And they're very aware of those things. Their level of awareness is so much greater than mine was at their age for things happening. And there's 1,000 reasons for that, right? But we sometimes have to balance those heavy things with lighter things for them. And so it depends, you know, where we are and sort of moods and, you know, a lot of factors that play into that. But even just still thinking about Buenos Aires, right? That's one of the places we were looking at. Maybe we could stay here for a while and live here. So we were looking at our time there through the lens of what would it be like to live here? So we weren't sort of just doing touristy things. We were visiting schools. We were checking out different neighborhoods. We were looking at it through a different lens. And yeah, you're noticing the different look and feel of the neighborhoods. You're noticing the different, you know, levels of access people have to things. You're noticing, I don't remember the name of it. There's a whole kind of, it connects as you're going into the main part of, I'll call it downtown. I can't remember exactly what it's called, but there's a whole area of kind of slums, right, that have been built. They're all all unofficial, you know, housing. Probably controversial. I don't know the history of all of it, right? we're exposed to all of that, and those are things that we can choose to be curious about and learn about. And those are the many layers of a place that exist that go far beyond, let's go see just the famous, opera house and, some of the other things that are sort of tick the box.
I think there's a difference between tourism and traveling.
Yes.
And they are distinct feelings for me.
They're distinct intentions as well. And they both have their place.
Yeah, completely.
Yeah. And we've done a mix of both, to be clear. Like, we've done a mix of both. Depending on where we are and what we have needed at the time.
And I think, and so I'm really cautious, or I'm really aware of what I call poverty porn, where there is like in South Africa, I refused to do it. I was like, I'm not going on this trek into a compound and whatever. And I know that there are social enterprises that get money doing it, and I know the pro sides of it. But from an emotional, how am I showing up? I want to engage in different ways.
Yeah. And we haven't done any of that, but I do know what you're talking about. Yeah.
And it's a choice, right, of how you want to experience a place as well.
Yeah, it is. And there's 1,000 factors that go into, when you're traveling around the world, there's 1,000 things that go into the decisions of where you go, why you go there, how long you stay, what you see while you're there. And, we were talking the other day, also there becomes a level of exhaustion in traveling and living like that actually starts to impede, your ability to make decisions and decide, what you need. And that's a whole factor all on its own too.
And has there been a kind of like, we're going to stay, because this idea of experiencing and checking out places with a view of spending longer, were there any rules, or rules is a hard word, but guidelines of, okay, if we're gonna go to a country, or we're gonna go to a place, then we're gonna stay X amount of time in the country to make it worth it. Sounds transactional, but for you to be able to have an immersive experience as opposed to a more light touch experience. Sometimes you want a light touch as well.
Yeah. I don't know that we sort of stated anything explicitly beyond, like, for us, looking at schools mattered, right?
Yeah.
Because there had to be a place that was going to work for the girls. So that was one of the things that we made sure we indexed time on.
And when did you decide, like, you were traveling in a sabbatical way to then, where we end up? Because that was a switch in your thinking as well.
Well,
of
yes
schools.
and no. We always had that as a possibility.
Okay.
But it was sort of a question mark, right? Because you just don't know what you don't know. And it was like, well, if we can do that. So we always knew that there were a few places that we were specifically going to look at because we had already done the research, right? Again, you can't just sort of land anywhere you want. You're like, okay, great, we're going to live here now. This just doesn't work that way. So we knew the places where there were pathways. And so those are places we deliberately stayed a little longer. And we were looking at schools and we were looking at life through a different lens. Versus other places where we just really had a deep desire to go see that place. And we weren't looking at it through the lens of, gosh, what if we could live here? We were just experiencing it. And we were open to the experience that we had. So we didn't go in really anywhere with sort of like, here are the 10 things we got to go see and go do. We would show up and we're like, well, let's see what opportunities present themselves. And we kept things very loose. And in many ways, that was wonderful. And in many ways, it got to be really challenging. Pros and cons and lots of lessons learned. But so that's we sort of had an idea on the front end, but we were open to what becomes possible as we learn and explore and what things come up for us that are sort of, non-starters. But yeah, I think other than we knew we needed to look at the education angle, I feel like, gosh, I learned a lot about international school that I didn't know I was going to need to learn in that process. That's a whole other topic. I don't know that we had other, guidelines per se. Again, other than I wanted to make sure we were taking in history, taking in cultural things. Some of it was luck. We spent a month in Norway, and we happened to arrive. Actually, it was after our first time in Albania. We went to Norway. And we happened to arrive days before Constitution Day in May. And we got to go be a part of Constitution Day, which was really cool. So that was, we didn't plan it. We got lucky. We were in Southeast Asia, in Malaysia, just before Chinese New Year a couple of years ago. Right?
Amazing.
So we some of that, was luck in our timing, where we got to participate in certain cultural things that we might not have if we had been there at a different time of the year. And so, the cultural angle was also maybe a guideline, I guess.
And is there anything like from the cultural angles? I'm really curious about this idea of borders and boundaries and the binary, arbitrary nature of them, and why they exist, and political geek that I am, and it's the cultural nuances which can be, the idiosyncratic of, oh my God, I just don't understand what these people are about, and the frustrations to the, holy crap, I'm engulfed in a context and a culture and a community that I wasn't expecting, because of in Spanish you would say manera de ser, the way of being. And I'm curious as to what you've kind of observed from a place of, oh, that's really different, but then also I want that to be a part of my life, and what you've adopted. And whether it's customs or ritual or manera de ser, that you've kind of observed and thought, oh, that's really interesting, or that resonates and I didn't know that it could because I come from somewhere so different.
The two things that spring to mind, one is just like surface level kind of, but Japanese toilets. Like, I would love to adopt Japanese toilets. Like, why has the world not adopted heated toilet seats? On a deeper level.
Creature comforts is a beautiful thing.
Oh my gosh, they're amazing. On a deeper level, the thing that springs to mind is so much of the rest of the world, and it looks different in different countries and different cultures, but so much of the rest of the world moves at a slower, a slower pace than the US. Like, the balance of how you live your life is not about go spend 20 hours a day at the office and make sure you get ahead in your career. It's a lot more balanced. And so you see people enjoying their life. They're spending time deliberately in third spaces with friends, with family. They're making sure that is not sacrificed, and that is, from a US perspective, it almost feels radical, because that is so out of balance in the US. And so one of the things that I have really embraced, and our situation makes it possible to embrace it, being on sabbatical, just slowing down and not sort of chasing the next thing all the time, making space and for genuine connections and conversation. And it is such a nicer way to just be in the world than sort of, looking at your calendar and thinking, what's the next thing I have to get to? How am I going to get there? Do I have time? Can I squeeze this thing in? And so that for me has been a pretty radical shift in sort of how I look at the world.
And what I think is quite curious as you travel around the world, and I'm kind of curious on your take because the extent of it, but literal dynamics of designed space. So you have the plaza or the piazza or the Meydan, or these squares where people congregate, and this intergenerational.
It is intergenerational,
Right.
and I noticed that too.
Oh my God, you've got the kids with the abuelos. It's the most lovely thing. And I say abuelos because we're Spanish speakers, but it is this. But it will be the same in Italy as it is in Greece.
You see it here in Albania,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And so I think about the individualism of living in London, and I think it's very similar to living in the US, where it's you get into your car, you live in your house, and
it's like compartmentalized.
I'm curious about your take on the makeup of the spaces that you see that have influenced behavior and cultural nuance that you think that's really important to where we want to be and who we want to be now.
Some of it is that physical space, right? As you noted. Other places are just, they have these third spaces. And it's not just the physical space for them, but it's the cultural dynamic around them that embraces using them in that way, right? Because it's possible for them to exist and nobody use them in that way. But the culture works with it and supports that being the way that people operate. I mean, there's nothing saying you can't have third spaces in the US. I mean, they do exist, but it is a very car-driven culture. Things are much more spread out. The cultural dynamic doesn't support it in the same way. And there's also, again, just that level of sort of busyness where even, let's say you had plazas in the same way. Let's say people lived more intergenerationally, and some do, but, traditionally, if you want to use that in air quotes, right, they don't. You still have this culture of busyness and stuffing your day full, which is going to make it challenging. Here in Albania, you got people who sit in a coffee shop for 2-3 hours and think nothing of it.
Yeah.
I mean, you're not going to find that in the US. The culture is it rewards something different. And it's not to say that either is, categorically better or worse. They're just different.
Yeah.
They're just different. And so, but yeah, in terms of what I want in my life, I like that slower balance. It doesn't mean that you can't be ambitious. It doesn't mean that you can't have drive. You give it space to show up differently. And you feel more in balance with yourself.
And so has your idea of what normal is shifted because of not just being here, but because of the experience that you've all had over the last few years?
Yes, I also think normal is situational.
Yeah.
It's super situational, right? I think like if we were to pack up our stuff today and get on an airplane and go, home, and I don't even know where to tell you where that would be.
Yeah, that would have definitely have been my next question.
That's like I don't even know. We have nowhere to go back to as such. We would probably go through some significant, reverse culture shock of, I would want to bring the intention of this slower, more balanced life with me. And the reality is that I would probably be swallowed up by the soup of the pace and all of the things that just exist and to be clear, right, the US is not a monolith, but we have lived in metro areas, right, across several different states. Versus, like the countryside or something where, you probably can find, more of that. But the life that we would, ostensibly go back to, we would be dropped into this soup. So it would take real intention. And even with the intention, I think that outward pressure would be really tough to sort of butt up against. So, it's normal. I think you adjust it for where you are. And I think you adjust it for where you are in your phase of life.
But I guess what I mean by normal, like that kind of that busyness, the separation, the isolation, the like having traveled around community, collective centric cultures, yeah, you could get sucked in, but there's going to be some profound shifts in your DNA of how you want to interact and how you show up, so that, yeah, you could get sucked into the soup, but there's something profound in you.
In terms of what you're seeking.
Yeah, of what you're seeking, but also I think there's something about how you show up in the world. And that kind of being so profound that there is no other way for me to be anymore.
It's interesting, actually, when we were traveling nomadically, one of the things that made it really tough to continue was lack of community. It can be very, very isolating. You're traveling as a family, but you become everything for each other. And that is not, frankly, it's not a healthy dynamic.
Yeah.
We all need people outside of whatever our village looks like, right?
Yeah.
We need a big enough village to support us as humans. And usually it's sort of multiple villages, right? That maybe, have overlapping circles and connect and touch, but are, multiple spaces that we exist in. And there are ways to travel nomadically, including as a family, where you find community. It requires slowing way down and spending much longer somewhere. And it requires intentional effort to go find and be a part of community. And for a lot of reasons, that just wasn't possible for us. We sort of had a time window that we, right? And we just...
And relationships take time.
And relationships take time. And so one of the things that putting our feet down in Albania has given us is the ability to become part of community again. And yeah, it takes work, it takes intention. But in terms of like how I want to show up in the world, I've always been a connector. I've always valued authentic with people. And I think now I have even more appreciation for the role of that in my life. I know how vitally important it is, because you actually start to shrivel up as a human when you don't have that. And I saw it in all of us as we were traveling. It was like the battery just ran out of juice,
And that's interesting to me, right? Because I think it sounds great. Oh, we're going to travel as a family.
It sounds glamorous.
It sounds amazing, right? But the pressure of like constantly, but particularly in like mother mode, I imagine, I'm not a mother, but I imagine that it's the logistics and it's the organizing, then the moods and the preteenness of it all, which freaks...
and the perimenopauseness of it.
And it freaks me the hell out about any of that. And then, but also then there's a romantic dynamic and a partner dynamic and
there are a lot of dynamics.
And maintaining that relationship. And also just being like, I just want a night off from all of you. Yeah. And I want to go out for a drink with my friends. And then it's like, shit, who are my friends here?
Right. Oh, my friends are all online halfway around the world.
Right?
In different directions.
And so this kind of organizer, logistics, and having spent the last 2 months of my life, I don't want to make any more decisions.
Yeah.
I want somebody to make decisions for me.
That is real. It's all of those things. And I think another important piece there is it's the parts of you that you've left behind.
Say more about that.
Yes, it looks glamorous on the outside. Oh, we're visiting Japan. We're going to, Singapore. We're going, right? It looks amazing. And it is. I mean, in many ways, it is. And it is an absolute privilege. I mean, full stop. Absolute privilege, right? And internally, it's massively destabilizing. I use this metaphor. I cannot claim credit for it. And it's not a perfect metaphor, right? But the legs of the stool. When I was still working and was trying to find an international role, I did a lot of conversations, with people. And someone I spoke with is actually the one who presented it this way. But they said, when you make a change as big as going overseas. You change a lot of the legs of your stool out, right? Okay, maybe your career is kind of sort of similar, but not completely, right? You're changing the culture. You're changing your, physically where you're living, but also the style of living, right? You're changing maybe the language. You're changing for your kids. They're changing their schools. Like you're changing all these dynamics. Well, when you go and do it the way we did it, nomadically, without even, career as an anchor, you're literally changing every single thing in your life except for your family. And even that dynamic shifts as you go forward, right? So your stability falls out from underneath you. And you don't realize it at first because you're sort of on that high of like, oh my God, we're seeing the Colosseum in Rome. And oh my gosh, this is El Alhambra in Spain. And, you're just, it's like this amazing, dream that you've built up in your head. And it is.
Yeah.
And then you sort of move through that and go, I'm really tired.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of lonely. And everything is hard.
Yeah.
Because yes, it's the logistics. It's I just need to make us dinner. And I just need to go to the supermarket. But we just got here and I can find it on Google, obviously. But okay, I don't know where anything in the store is. I don't even know what they have.
Yeah.
I can come in with certain assumptions, but I might not find those things. If you're in a country where, you can't speak the language, you can't even Greece, right? It's just totally different, right? So then you
can't even pretend.
Then you can't even pretend, except okay, well, that's the feta cheese, and God, there's a lot of feta cheese, okay, right? But then you're in this store and you can't even use Google Translate because the concrete walls are so thick and you're deep in the store and there's no signal, and you're like, I don't know what am I. I've literally sat down on the ground and practically broken out into tears because there's a level of, it's not just exhaustion. It's a level of your identity gets really scrambled.
Yeah.
And you're just sort of living at the base of Maslow's, pyramid, trying to take care of your basic day-to-day functions. In the midst of seeing all these amazing things, but also, feeling a little lonely. And then for me, I stepped away from a career that I loved, and that was a huge void. And so you just got all these parts of your life that are no longer a part of your life in the same way. And there's grief.
Yeah.
And so you're carrying all of this around as you travel the world. And that's not the stuff that, makes it on Instagram posts.
No, that's not what the bloggers will tell you about.
And so it's where are my people that I could just sit down and have a real conversation with about this? And you schedule conversations with people, but then it's we can talk, in 3 days from now, and we can line up our time zones. And it's just oh my gosh.
I'm gonna have moved on to something else being a problem by then.
How to self-soothe, through that. And it can be really hard. And so, it's really destabilizing in a way that is, I think, not visible to people who have not lived like this.
And what have been some of the self-soothing mechanisms that you found?
I think they tend to be really simple things that we tend to sort of think, there's no way that can help. That's too simple. But sometimes it's listening to music. Music is a mood enhancer, right? Sometimes I have actually a playlist. I started it when we moved to the Seattle area years ago, and I took a job there. And, for anyone who's, been to Seattle in mid-November or in the depths of winter knows that it's not a sunny, bright, cheery place.
No.
And it was a really tough transition for me in that regard. And so I built myself a playlist of sort of happy songs to lift me up. And I called it Commute because I would listen to it on my drive to work. It is still called Commute.
Yeah.
I've actually never changed the name, but I've added songs along the way. And that's the playlist I listen to when I need something to like buoy my spirits. But I've also got calm music.
Yeah.
You know, that I listen to when I'm in a melancholy mood, and I sort of just want to give myself space to be there. So music is a big one. I do a lot of writing. I've always written. For me, that's a way to slow my thoughts down, but also process them. I have like a billion posts that I've never hit publish on because, you know, they're more for me than they are for anyone else. And I also have journals that I've kept, but also movement, gentle movement. Walking, you know, I've been a runner for years. I haven't been able to run as we've traveled because that logistically becomes challenging. So I walk instead now. And sometimes I go on walks just to clear my head. But maybe, you know, I pop into a gym and get a workout in, right? I've found yoga along the way, like gentle, restorative yoga. Sometimes cooking for me is a bit meditative and gives me, you know, literally a taste of home or a taste of whatever it is I'm missing. So sometimes it's really simple stuff. But it's...
I found that like moving into this place and the Sunday night, it was all I wanted to do was unpack because I'd been packing.
Yeah.
And so the joy of unpacking and having clean pants and doing that kind of thing.
It's almost like a way of exhaling.
Yeah, and then going to the supermarket and then coming back. And I realized it's been weeks because I was reducing stocks at the flat in London, so I wasn't really cooking by the end of it. Yeah. And then I got rid of my whole pantry, which friends took. And so it was like, it's been weeks that I haven't just cooked. And so and the one thing I did bring was my pod. So I had the speaker and I had tunes on and I cooked. And it was this really nice feeling of a bit of normalcy and having the space to cook and just me jamming to good tunes. There was a real sense of just, now I can, I think exhale's a really good one because I've been so wound up. I'm tired and recovering. But that, I think, was a turning point moment. And it was, I don't even know where my phone is. I'm not responding to messages. I don't know what's going on. But I'm just having a good jam. And then I'm going to cook and I'm going to enjoy a really yummy meal.
There is something about holding space for yourself.
Yeah.
And that's really what all of those things, you know, that I just shared. It is about holding space for yourself.
Yeah.
To just be instead of do. And that's also, you know, in general been a profound shift. I think for me in particular, as we've been on this journey, you know, I used to, and I still fight it because, you know, I have certain tendencies. It's the way I'm wired, but I'm a doer by nature. But I'm learning to give myself permission to be, to create space for myself, to just exist in the world. I love to sit out. We have this porch outside of our kitchen here. And I love to just sit out on the porch in this rocking chair that I put out there and have my coffee in the morning.
That sounds very Americana.
Stare
in a nice way.
We've got this lovely view of the mountains, and I just stare at the mountains. And sometimes I do a grounding exercise, actually. And it's just the simple one where you sort of go through your five senses. What can I see? What can I hear? What can I, you know? And I just spend a couple minutes on it in the morning before I get sucked into any of the other stuff. Whether it's stuff I need to do, whether it's stuff in my phone, whether, you know, it's the stuff that takes you away. It's just sort of some of that basic grounding. And I have had to learn not only how to do it, but also to give myself permission to do it.
Yeah.
Because again, it's very simple. It's not rocket science. And yet making space for that is a huge necessity to live a life in the way that we're living right now, outside of our home country, where there are so many things that, even though we've adjusted in many ways to being here now in Albania, there are just things that are, not part of our DNA here, that require a level of thinking and engagement that is still, more than what it would be if we were just on autopilot, back home. And that's another, realization as we've traveled, is just how much of life, when you are outside of your home country or wherever you consider to have a level of comfort in the world, that you can't do on autopilot.
And I think there's something about this, and we were talking the other day, and I said, when I was saying to you that I like who I am when I'm not in London, because I have a level of curiosity and wonder that I don't, and I love London, and you're always discovering new places and new nooks and crannies, and it's magical in so many ways, and I love it. I'm a Londoner, proud Londoner. But the curiosity and wonder that I explore with, and I think there's something about the consciousness of being.
Yes.
And it's not to say that that isn't tiring, but the consciousness of exploring and observing and taking things in and thinking, why do they do that way? And that's kind of kooky, but actually no, you realize that there's reason for it. But it's so bizarrely different that you have to stop to observe and consciously take it in, to then analyze, to then think of it as being something that you could incorporate into your life. And all of that's happening so dynamically, I find, in me.
Yeah.
That there's something about the sights, the senses, like my senses tingle.
You're just alive in a different way.
Yeah.
Like a completely different way. I'm sort of in my head right now, just remembering places we've been around the world, but also compared to, just life back home. And, when you're doing life, wherever back home is for you, there's a lot of autopilot. There's a lot of just stuff that you do. You don't even think about the road you drive down or walk down or the train that you take, like whatever it is that you get around. You go to the grocery store, you sort of know the things that you buy. You're paying attention, but you're not engaged like a deep level. It's just something that you're doing. And so there's like a built-in rest, in a sense, but also, your curiosity is not activated in the same way as it is when you step out somewhere else, in the world, and suddenly, you notice everything because it is different. There is no part of your brain that's sort of resting or asleep. And I think in particular, when you are a curious person, and I am, and I know you are as well, you just suddenly, like, your brain is like, ooh, that's interesting. Oh, let me Google that. Oh, wonder what's going on over there. Oh, let me ask this question to this person over here. Oh, I wonder how, and suddenly you're off and running, and, you've got a part of your brain that's engaged in this like massively dynamic, alive way. In fact, I kind of drive, the rest of our family crazy because whenever we travel somewhere new, like that part of my brain is like, go, 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 like maximize everything. And I exhaust them because they're like, Mom.
But I've had to, in the time that I've been here, I've had to stop because my week one, it would have been, ooh, go do this, go do that, go see this. And I had to really consciously, physically and mentally, I was just tired. And I had to say, you're not here to tourist, you're here to be, and you're going to have a different kind of experience. So yes, you can walk around and get a sense of the place, but not everything needs to happen today, and everything needs to happen this week.
And that's the beauty when you're going to stay somewhere a little longer.
Yeah.
You can spread that out.
Oh yeah, because I was like, oh, this group has got this event happening, and you kind of sign up for something, and then you're like, I have zero interest in talking to people that know me and that I like, let alone having to make an effort and be awake type thing.
Yeah.
And so I had to kind of remind myself and again, to your point of like taking the time, it was, I needed to not be doing any of that. And I needed to catch up on some work. And so I found a couple of places that I really liked to work in. And it was like, it's okay.
And there's that permission piece again.
Yes. Yeah. It was that it's okay.
And it is. And it is giving ourselves permission to change the dynamic and to listen to what we need on any given day. Right? Because the ability to sort of know that you have a plan for your day, but then wake up in the morning and say, oh my gosh, I am not feeling it. I did not sleep well last night. Like, no, today's not it. And then to just be like, oh, well, I guess I'm going to change my mind and switch some of this stuff out.
Yeah.
And to just lean into that and do it. Or to wake up and say, gosh, I don't really have anything going on today, but I have energy. I want to do something. And to then try to figure out, well, great, what do I want to lean into?
Yeah.
Like the ability to have that kind of agency over your life is phenomenal. And I also massively appreciate that because there's no guarantee I get to keep that for the rest of my life.
No.
Right? And there are many people who would love to have that. And I want that for them. You know, and so what are small ways, you know, and there is intention that comes with that.
I think there's this understanding, though, that we talked about the other day, which was this grounding into your body to be able to listen to that and having a somatic awareness. And I have a big love for restorative yoga, right? Because, and yin yoga, and there's nothing else for you to do but sit with your body. And that meant a big shift, like a mental model shift for me when I was doing it. And I was told, you're not to do anything dynamic because you need to, part of calming my brain down after such an intense period was grounding in my body.
Yes.
And now I'm much more attuned to saying, what do I need? And where do I get that from? And how do I nourish that?
I had to learn that as well.
It's really hard. It's really, really hard.
I have a brain that never turns off. So yes, I concur. And when we arrived in Albania, you know, to stay, so it was our second time, you know, but this time we were staying, I was on empty. We all were. We were just utterly depleted. And I had to lean into that somatic experience. I had to figure out how to refill my well. And it had to come from learning to be in my body.
Yeah.
And not in my head. I had to move the focus entirely. And that was not easy.
And how do you navigate that, or how do you hold on to that with the kind of geopolitical makeup of what's going on in the world right now, which is, and holding the being American and the identity and the geopolitics of the world, because as you've navigated travel, I can imagine there's interactions and relationships and dynamics that have happened or are happening, but there's also, like we touched on grief, but you know, how are you navigating all of that, or are you navigating any of it, or what's your take on it? Maybe we start with what's your take, and then we figure out the navigation piece.
Oh yeah, that's a work in progress. It depends on the day. Sometimes it depends on the moment in the day. It's tricky. You know, it is. Things have changed so much since we left. And we're, you know, I'm not the one who's going to stick my head in the sand and be like, well, we live halfway around the world. I guess we don't really pay attention to what's going on. No, I'm actually very deeply aware of what's going on. It matters to me.
Yeah.
and finding, I was gonna say finding the balance, I mean, and that's not even the right word, but finding a way to navigate through all of the complexity, not just of, what's going on back in our home country, but really in other countries as well. Like there is a global change afoot. The dynamics are dynamic.
Yeah.
And then we're living in a foreign country, raising teenagers. Like there's so many layers. And so I need to be going to do more yoga. Is what I need to be going to do, because I know that is something that helps me. I'm still trying to make time to write, but writing is, I can't just sort of, put in my calendar like, hey, like on Thursday at 2 p.m. you're gonna like, I have to be in a headspace to do it, and then it physically in an environment that supports it. Yeah. So yeah, I think right now trying to find pockets where I am engaging in what's going on, but then pockets to disconnect.
And how are you navigating it as a family, like in terms of your kids, your partner, and also the conversations that you're having or that they're having or that you're kind of experiencing, particularly from a travel perspective? So how are those? Because part of that is it's a tension in your body as much as your mind.
It is. And the kids feel it. They're plugged in. They know what's going on. Yeah. They have feelings about it, big feelings some days. And sometimes it is just making space to hold each other. It is understanding that, they come home, or any one of us comes home and we're depleted in the moment, or we're sad, or we're distressed, or whatever it is that we're feeling, and just making space to just like, that's okay. Yeah. Just to have to normalize feeling whatever we're feeling, to not sort of say, oh, well, got to get through this. Like, no, just making space for the feelings, and sort of figuring out ways to support each other. What do we need to sort of move through this moment? And it's different at different times.
And has it been different in different cultures or contexts as you've traveled around? Do you feel like there's been distinct differences?
What's different, and I say this again, sort of thinking about, having teenagers, different cultures and locations support the girls being independent and having agency of their own. Like when we were in Japan, there was a cafe, that was, not super far away, but our younger daughter was like, can I have some money? I'm just going to get up in the morning and take myself to the cafe. I don't need you to go with me. It's all in Japanese, right? Yeah. She couldn't even order any, right? But she was like, I'm just going to go do this. She felt totally empowered. Yep. And the culture was super safe. You've got 3-year-olds walking to preschool by themselves. It just was a totally, right? So we were like, yeah, go. Great. Fabulous. I love that for you, actually. Yeah. And then when we were in Kuala Lumpur, we were in this, they've got these huge, tall apartment buildings that sit on top of malls, right? And I'm not talking any old mall. I'm talking about it's as if you took the whole town square and rolled it into a mall. It's got grocery shops and doctor's offices, and you name it, everything. It's in there. Yeah. And all she had to do was go down an elevator and through this, secret door, and there she is in the mall. Yeah. And this was earlier on in our travel, so she was a little bit younger. And, she's like, I want whatever from the store. I was like, great, go down and get it. And she was like, what do you mean go down and get it by myself? No, it's Malaysia, right? So they you should go speak English. It wasn't, or several other languages also, but, and it was like, yeah, just go. Message us if you have trouble. I felt totally like we all felt fine. Just saying like, great, go do it.
Yeah.
If you need us, we'll come to you, but like, you're not going to need, like, just go. We trust you.
Yeah.
You trust yourself. And sort of, she was terrified, before she did it. She comes back 15 minutes later and she's on top of the world. Like, I can do anything,
Yeah.
And so certain cultures have really enabled the girls to just step into their independence.
Yeah.
And it's been, and especially as teenagers, and that is something that classically teenagers, need opportunity to do. It's been amazing. And so I love that. I mean, there's, even in the heart of Tokyo, where we don't speak more than, 5 words of Japanese and everything's written in, hiragana, katakana, and kanji, you can still, with your phone, because the technology is so good.
Yeah.
And it is so safe, we can just say, go navigate, go do this thing. And there's zero problem doing it. Whereas, in other places, the language is a real impediment.
But then has it made you feel like reassess safety and security and fear and where fear comes from? Because these things are man-made, but so's fear and insecurity. And so, there are classic cases in the US where you've had a kid walk down to the shop to buy milk and somebody's called, like a neighbor's called social security, social services.
Yep.
And, that kid should not be walking down the street on their own. And so that neighbor is not thinking it's my responsibility to make sure that child is safe.
Because it's an individual culture, individualistic versus collectivist, where like in Japan, they're all thinking it's my responsibility to make sure that this kid gets to school safely.
But that person could argue that I am being collectivist because I am looking after that kid by calling social security. But it's a warped view of it, in my opinion.
Yeah, agree.
But as opposed to going out and saying, I'm going to look after you and it's my role to keep an eye on you. It's my role to keep an eye on you and report somebody. So do you see what I mean? Like the dynamics of what fear is and who cultivates fear and where that fear comes from is it us? Because somebody could have come and kidnapped your kid in the Malaysian mall. That could have happened.
Yeah,
but our dynamics and our relationships to these real and perceived, like our perception of fear, like that, it's like an elastic.
It is
that we stretch and we don't, and we kind of, it's malleable. Do you feel like that? I don't know. Just interested in your take on that and how you've, navigated that difference, but also see it in yourself of, oh shit, that never needed to be a fear.
Yeah, I have a few thoughts. One, I come back to privilege, right? Not in all cases, but in enough cases, I recognize that I am a white woman.
Yeah.
And that affords me, without asking for it, but it affords me certain privilege and certain built-in safety that maybe other people don't have.
Yeah.
Right? So that is a dynamic that's real. And again, I've become more and more aware of that as we've traveled. But I also think about, like, and Albania is an interesting example, right? When we think about this, and there are many perceptions and misperceptions of Albania and Albanian culture outside of Albania. And one of them sometimes is, oof, that can't be safe. What? How do you feel safe living there? I feel safer living here than in many places I've been in the world.
Oh, people have said that about Albania being unsafe.
Yeah, there's a perception.
Ah, okay. Yeah.
I don't know how pervasive it is, but I know it does exist to some degree. And I can tell you as a woman living in Albania, I feel very safe. I mean, I feel safer to walk around at 10 o'clock at night by myself in the dark than I ever would back in the US.
Yeah. Yeah.
It doesn't mean that something can't happen here. Something can happen anywhere, and stuff does happen here. But I don't feel unsafe. And so to your question of, and I know sort of category, and like many of the women here, we've had these conversations.
Oh, completely.
You know?
Like the other day I could have walked home at night and I just didn't want to. It was like midnight and it was half an hour. That felt.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh, you're completely fine. You could walk home. And then it was like, I don't want to be the 0.01%.
Right.
But also, I was like, well, I said, would I walk home at night in London? No, at midnight.
Nor would I in most parts of the US. And part of that too is, I've been raised, well, if you're in a parking lot at night, you're carrying a key between your fingers.
Yes.
And you are taking certain preventative measures and you are on high alert.
But this is that high alert, you're holding the tension in your
Massively.
body. And the fact that you're wandering around as women with fear.
Massive fear.
It has a massive effect on the tension that you're holding.
Completely.
And I think it's really interesting here how people are least interested in my phone, in my bag, in my wallet.
You can leave your phone sitting on a table in a coffee shop. You could accidentally forget it, walk away, come back an hour later, and it might still be on the table.
Yes.
Or probably someone's given it, to one of the clerks,
Yeah.
But it's there. Like no one's taken it, no one's run off with it. But I contrast that, again, sort of back to Buenos Aires, where we were cautioned, like you do not have your phone out. You just don't.
Yeah.
Because it's going to get stolen.
Yeah.
I mean, the same thing about London. Like, oh, don't go ride the tube with your phone out. Stuff's going to get stolen. So there are realities that are different in different parts of the world. But it's interesting because you got me thinking about, like, well, what drives that? Because you could argue economics drives that, right? Okay, well,
no.
I mean, look at Albania. It does not have the strongest economy. And yet you don't see that happening here. So there's a really big cultural piece of that. Massive cultural piece of sort of what is tolerated and what is not, and what the collective of society will and won't uphold or punish, or you know what I mean?
Yes.
And so there is a piece that is much larger than sort of your individual role.
Because that thing about like the Japanese kids walking themselves to school, it's because it's the knowledge that there is the expectation that we will look out for each other and we will be respectful. It's built in to the dynamic. And versus you could go somewhere else in Asia and people will be littering on the street and it will not feel as safe. Mm-hmm. And your kids will not be as safe.
Right.
And you're still in it, and you're in the region, but the dynamics are so fundamentally different.
Totally different.
And I think there's something about how we navigate that as observers, as travelers, and what we kind of take in and what we leave behind.
Yeah.
That's the bit that I'm kind of curious about.
I mean, I think we can adopt certain shifts in our mindsets and attitudes and behaviors, but once you move it into a different culture, you can't bring that whole culture with you. You can bring pieces of it, and you can affect sort of yourself, and you can affect a circle of people around you.
It starts with you.
It does start with you, and it's so much bigger than you.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting. Yeah, you got me thinking. It's interesting, sort of what things can you affect?
And I think when I see so many expats coming to Albania, I am curious about, and again, the socioeconomic, political minded brain that I've got is, when people are like, oh, Amazon hasn't come here yet. And the consumption patterns. And
I mean, we can talk about consumption patterns too. Like right. That is definitely something that, for us has shifted.
But, like this, like €7 for a can of coconut milk, which is just insane. But it's like, are the expats going to change Albanian? Or is Albania going to change the expats?
It's both.
And it's both. But do you see what I mean?
Yeah, there's a tension there.
Because as an outsider, you can have all these feelings about, you want to learn the language, and those that do learn the language, or those that don't, or those that integrate, and those that create ghettos, and the responsibility of being an outsider and being a guest in people's country.
It's our job to fit within their space.
But that's not necessarily,
and to respect it.
But the fact that, like, even the term, like in a lot of these kind of Facebook groups and whatever, they're called expats.
Oh, that's a whole contentious topic.
And it bugs, like, the word bugs me a lot.
Yep.
Because I kind of think it's colonial, right? Because white folk are expats, everybody else are migrants.
Yep.
And so I find it really jarring, because I think it's indicative of a mindset that people then come into a country with, because it's, why is this not like where I've come from?
It's a set of expectations that go with that.
But it's not, I think it's more demand, right? Why is this not like this? Or this is not like how it is where I come from. As opposed to, how can I adapt to be part of a community and to be part of a culture and to be respectful of it, versus
I'm curious about it.
Yeah, as opposed to it has to fit in with me. And I think, as whether it's Albania or other parts of the world, but this attitude to migration, and then this added word of expat, particularly in the more developing worlds, where expats are fine, migrants are bad. And you must have seen a lot of that in different groups and the approaches to that.
So much.
As you've traveled, I'm kind of curious about that.
I mean, you do. You see it. I mean, you could pop into pretty much any expat group, and I've been a part of many as we've traveled, and you're going to find one of those threads, at least. And it's a heated topic, rightly so. And I do think so much of how we move through the world, right or wrong, it is shaped by the perspective that we've, grown up with, but also how willing we are to open our minds to the experience that we want to have. What's our intention when we travel somewhere, when we stay longer, and we're not just traveling, but we're maybe living what is our intention? Why are we there? What are we trying to learn? What are we trying to further, not only for ourselves, but for others? Who are the others? Who's benefiting? Who's being harmed? These are questions that we have to start paying attention to. We have to start, at the very least, asking them. And I will say, for me, I go all the way back to my experience living in Mexico years ago, and I went 3 different times. And for me, that was such a transformative experience, not just because I learned the language and the culture, but because I gained truly such massive appreciation for the amount of work that it takes to go live somewhere else.
Yeah.
And I forevermore took that with me when I went back to the US. And, you see people who have come from across generations and time to live in the US who came from somewhere else. And to be clear, most of us came from somewhere else at some point in time, And these people are like heroes in a sense to me, because I just think, wow, to give up whatever you gave up. And in many cases, to come to a place where you're not always treated with the warmest welcome.
Yep.
And you're still here, and you're still fighting for what you want, and you're still working to make your way. And you speak how many languages? That to me is oh my God, that's wow. And so when I think about migration, and I think about, gosh, that word is almost become a 4-letter word, in so many circles today and in politics. And I just think, I wish everyone could have an experience outside of their home country, in a place where the culture is significantly different enough from what they've grown up in. The language is not one that they recognize.
Yep.
And they have to figure out how to make their way in the world. And they have to stay there long enough for it to like register at this level where they go, oh, now I get it.
Yeah.
Like, can you imagine how different the world would be?
Oh, massive. Without a shadow of a doubt.
The level of respect that would exist.
And just empathy. And just
massive empathy.
There would be respect, there would be empathy, but also just like shared experience. I think there's something about
shared values too, I think.
But you'd also recognize that somebody may do it in a different way, but the end goal is exactly aligned to where we sit.
Well, and everyone does have different capacity and resources and constraints and all these things that make everyone's experience unique. And some are easier and some are much, much harder.
But everybody wants their kid to get to school safely.
Yeah, well, what role? Think so.
But do you know what I mean?
Yes.
I don't have kids, but I would like everybody's kids to get to school safely. Now, what
not just
role?
Get there.
But
stay safe the whole time and not even have to worry about their safety. Gosh, wouldn't that be amazing?
That's a whole American can of worms. But I think what's my responsibility? Where am I? How can I be of service in that ambition that kids get to school safely? So does that mean I drive responsibly? Does it mean that I look out for the kid? If I see a kid walking up the street, where am I in service of that shared ambition? And I think I'm using that because we've talked about it, right? And it's an easy one to look at. But you can extrapolate that into
so many different
anything else, where it's if we showed up with that kind of what's my role in, and where can I be of service, or where can I make a contribution to this end goal?
But I think it's in that orientation. It's actually just even in adopting that orientation versus I'm going through the world looking out for me.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm looking out for me and my family. And that's my circle of empathy. I think it is actually, how do we all expand our circles of empathy? Who do we care about? How are we working to, expand our reach and our acts of service in service of others? Like, how are we showing up in the world, caring about more than just the people in our immediate bubbles?
And the thing is, if we can't have empathy for those that we don't know, right, which is the massive problem, whether it's Gaza, whether it's Yemen, whether it's
pick any number of
things going on in the world, then what do we need to do? We need to show up and go to those places, right? Like, the more you travel, the more you begin to feel an allegiance and an alignment, because all of a sudden what's happening in Lebanon makes sense because I've been to Lebanon. I've been to Syria.
Well, and you start to see the connections between different cultures and countries too.
Completely.
And between people who are in diaspora from those places, and you start to connect to them and relate to them in new ways.
Much more differently because you've had a lived experience.
Yeah.
It's not just, oh, I like the food, but I've never been.
Right.
It's, I've broken bread with people in your country and I see you. And I think there's something about travel, and again, separate to tourism, that an extended travel, which I think, which is why I was so curious to talk to you about, that makes you seen, but changes the way that you see.
I mean, I think you fundamentally see people as human. It is a strengthening of humanity in a world where, we live so much of our lives online. And
increasingly so.
Increasingly so in these polarized bubbles that have been engineered that way on purpose, and it is easy to lose sight of humanity, actually. And it is very, you can't have a nuanced conversation online. It's just not the space. I mean, I won't say you can't at all, but it does not readily facilitate that.
It's harder to.
You get that more so when you're in person with someone.
Saying that, and I will, and this is obviously a shout out to Hillary, but we met in a class, realized that we connected, and committed to spending time with each other on a very kind of regular, we put a time in the diary, this is our time to speak. And she picked me up from the airport here.
Yeah.
Because all of a sudden I'm coming. And it's not just I'm coming to visit, it's hello, here I am.
But you were intentional about that.
Yeah. And now we're sitting in the same space as each other. And it's just really, it's this beautiful, her kids have heard my voice booming into their living room. And it's like, oh shit, Deepa's here and Deepa's coming. And they know who I am because they've heard me in their space. And then all of a sudden it's, oh, we're going to play board games and we're going to hang out and we're going to cook or we're going to have food together. And there's a familiarity where, because there's been intentionality in that dynamic.
You've built the relatedness. You've built the connection.
You then go into offline and it's, okay, so I know how you take your tea because I've watched you drink tea on Zoom. So we're going to crack on.
I mean, there are people that we have visited as we've traveled around the world who I had only known virtually. Yeah. In some cases, they were people I worked with. And I made a point as we, got near them, I would love to meet you in person. I mean,
yes,
I've done
let's
that
hug.
Around the globe. Literally, you can build real friendships and relationships online, and then they're even better, when they become real life.
Oh, when you hug somebody, it's just, it's the most beautiful thing.
Yeah, but it's like I'd like to say we live in this, it's a big, small world.
Yes.
Because, I mean, and you've experienced this yourself, right? I mean, it's not even 6 degrees of separation. It's like 2 in some cases, right? Where we just live, like when we just don't know it. And so when we're open to the possibility of what could be, and traveling facilitates that, because you meet someone and then you realize, oh, they know this other person that knows this other person that I know. Mm-hmm. And then new things become possible. And it's, I don't know, it's like putting a ping pong ball out into the world and just sort of seeing where it's going to bounce. And you don't really know.
But yeah, and I think it makes that richness.
It's so rich.
And I've literally sat here and realized that me and somebody have had something in common. I'm meeting somebody tomorrow who's a friend of a friend. And all of a sudden, that's going to shape my experience here, and what then percolates, and then what happens and what goes out into the world, and what I receive energetically as a result of all of that is the magic.
Mm-hmm. And the connections that continue to come because of that ripple effect.
And I think it's the looking up and the looking out and imagining with curiosity and wonder. But I think one of the things that really struck me, as we've not just spoken today, but as we've spoken over the last few days about your approach, is that there's intention, but there's respect in it. And that's a sort of self-reflection of, how do I process and how do I take this with me?
What's my role?
Yeah.
Yeah, because each of us gets to shape the world that we're in, not just for ourselves and how we sort of experience the world, but how we want to leave the world a better place. Mm-hmm. But that is also an orientation, the desire to leave the world a better place and decide what that means for you at any particular moment in time. And when you can see how the world is really so connected, that importance grows. These are not like random places on a globe that I'm pointing to. They're real places with real people, with real stories, with, they become real. Yeah. And they matter at a level just at a deeper level.
And I think there's something about the masses of learning, because curiosity comes with wonder, which comes with learning. And something that we've talked about, we haven't gone into deeply here, is the unlearning.
So much unlearning.
And that unlearning piece is also part of the richness, because we all come with our perceptions. Like you were saying, why are you going to Albania? It's not going to be safe. We come with perceptions. We come with ideas. We come with prejudices. We come with all of this baggage.
Many of them unconscious until they become conscious.
Massively. And then all of a sudden but you've got to be open to confronting where it comes from. Because otherwise we can live in our expat bubbles, you know, in these little kind of isolated pockets. And then it becomes about geography. Then you're just chasing sunshine, as opposed to chasing something deeply profound, not just in terms of experience and consumption, like that kind of experience, but profound for you and who you, to your point, how do you leave the world, but how do you shape and change yourself in that process?
Yeah, who do you want to become?
Yeah.
Right? Because if we wanted to just stay the same, we would have never left.
Yeah.
What would have been the point? The whole point is to grow and expand and see things differently and take in other perspective. Again, not to stay the same person, but to sort of then go, oh, okay, so how do I want that to shape me? How do I want to move forward? And our kids have, you know, massively benefited from that. They see things, you know, they have a very different view on the world than they did before we left. And that was the whole point.
Yeah.
And they can see the value of all of these cross-cultural ties, and they can see where history interlinks, and they can see, yes, the good in the world, but also the evil in the world, right? They see things more deeply, more broadly, and they have a bigger foundation on which to go forward in their lives and say, how do I want to show up in the world? How do I want that to impact who I become as I grow up? And some of that will be conscious, some of that will be unconscious.
And some of it they won't realize now, they'll realize in 20 years' time.
Absolutely, right?
Yeah.
And so I have to, on the hard days, and we have them, I have to remind myself of that, right? That they're going to have revelations years from now about things right now that might feel really hard.
Yeah.
Later, they're going to be profound, and vice versa. Things that right now they think are amazing, and later it's going to be like, oh.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
because it goes in all directions.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's about, the experience has been so much more than exploring just, you know, different foods and different music and different, right? It goes so much deeper than all of that. And the more you travel and the more you see the world, the more you realize you just barely scratched the surface.
Yeah, this is the thing.
They're like, I could do this for the rest of my life if someone wants to fund that. And,
You both.
you know, because there's just so much richness and depth out there if we go looking for it. And there's so much humanity, even amidst the pain, even amidst the really horrific things that are happening. And I think part of what I am searching for is the humanity.
Yeah.
It's all the many ways that actually humans are dynamic and resilient and multi-layered and nuanced, and the stories that they have can just pull you in and enrapture you, you know, and that's the beating heart of life.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
You're not going to find it in a textbook. You're not going to find it, you know, sitting in a corporate job. You know, you have to go out there and experience it.
That feels like a very beautiful place to close.
It does.
Unless there's anything else that you feel.
There's probably a million things.
There are a million things we could
didn't
talk
touch
about.
on, but you know, that's life. So
Shall we close there?
let's do it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. That was fun.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode. If this conversation sparks something in you, don't let it end here. Share this episode with someone who needs to hear it, or better yet, gather your people and dive deeper into these ideas together. The world changes one meaningful conversation at a time. If you'd like to join one of our group order sessions, keep an eye on our website, which is www.deepameaningful.co, or sign up to our monthly newsletter and be the first to know what's coming up. The Udder is brought to you by the Deep and Meaningful Consultancy. Our music is from the song Unreasonable World by Bernard Schimpelsberger.